What do Amazon, Walmart, and Uber have in common? There are some of the largest companies in the country. They each had billions of dollars in revenue last year, and they each employ thousands of people who seek federal assistance for food and health care because the workers cannot afford them on the wages they earn. A new report from the Government Accountability Office found that employees for some of the largest companies in the country are seeking federal assistance for food or health care at an increased rate. In an 11-state study, the top employers of people who receive SNAP food benefits and rely on Medicaid were Walmart, Amazon, and collectively the ride-hailing and delivery apps. Walmart and Amazon are the nation's two largest private employers, and as the Washington Post observed, the situation for Amazon workers has deteriorated over time. Quote, the number of Amazon workers relying on the federal programs for the poor nearly tripled between February of 2020 and September of 2025. Now, in that same period, Amazon's founder and the Washington Post's owner, Jeff Bezos, his net worth nearly doubled from $113 billion with a B to $224 billion with a B. That's according to Forbes' net worth tracker. Not only are billionaires expanding the inequality gap, because that's its own problem, they're seizing control of what used to be a reliable path for recourse for regular Americans, politics. In an analysis of campaign spending during the 2024 cycle, the New York Times found that, quote, 300 billionaires and their immediate family members donated more than $3 billion, which was 19% of all political contributions in federal elections in 2024. These are billionaires who make up just 0.00003% of the population, but 19% of political spending. Perhaps the most famous example of a billionaire, trillionaire takeover that we're talking about is Elon Musk himself, the world's richest man. He mustered his considerable resources to help elect President Trump in 2024. He was actually asked about his foray into politics in an interview this week.
How do you, as you look back on that, do you regret getting so involved in politics? Do you think it was a good thing to do?
I think I got a little too involved in politics, got carried away, frankly.
Getting carried away is finishing a pint of ice cream in one sitting, or getting 20 McNuggets when you really only need two. Musk spent $290 million on the 2024 election between Donald Trump's campaign and his donations to other Republican candidates. And his money bought him a make-believe role in the White House with real consequences. DOJ's gutting of USAID has resulted, although the government will deny this consistently, resulted in 750 deaths. That's according to the Boston University estimate. Joining me now is Matt Stoller, Director of Research at the American Economic Liberties Project. He's the author of Goliath, the 100 Years' War Between Monopoly, Power, and Democracy. And Matt warns about this all this time. Matt, this is not a new story, but it is an accelerating story. It is wild, the political control that the billionaire class and the corporate class have in this country in a way that 25 years ago, maybe you could imagine it, but most people were not imagining.
Yeah, I mean, Franklin Delano Roosevelt talked about what he called the informal economic government of the United States, which is really what he was struggling with during the New Deal. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. The level, it's not really wealth. We're not talking about, some money here or there or pieces of property. We're talking about society shaping amounts of wealth. So what FDR called princes of property, as opposed to just, owning a house or something like that.
Matt, there are a lot of things going on here in this topic. One of them is that the wealthiest companies in the country, the ones that make the most money, have this disproportionate number of employees who can't make a living. There are lots and lots of Americans who are holding two jobs and in some cases 3 jobs. If you try and fix that, and you make the argument to fix it, and a few people have, and they've run in primaries and they've won, all of a sudden they get accused of being communists and socialists. In fact, most people think that the political parties are unfair, and most people think the system is unfair.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest welfare cheats by far in this country are big corporations, and I think when you say that, they call you a communist, but it turns out it is 100% true. And if these corporations didn't have the power to suppress wages, to raise prices, to do the things that they're doing, we wouldn't need these huge redistribution programs, because the real redistribution going on is from all of us to them. And then the
yes.
government comes in with this pittance with some Medicaid and some food stamps and stuff like that. But that's really just to kind of repair from a lot of the extraction that's going on across the economy.
And Amazon very actively fights unionization. And by the way, when their chief delivery service, UPS, obviously they're unionized and they're members of the Teamsters Union. Amazon has the wealth and the ability to basically start taking business away from UPS because it just builds its own fleet of trucks and carries on. So our normal safeguards that sort of protected workers and at least ensured they had a basic minimum living wage still doesn't exist. I remind people, Walmart argues in favor of universal health care because they don't want to have to pay it for their employees.
Yeah, I mean, they're torn because they want to be able to fire people and have those people be scared and not get health care if they get fired. But they also don't want to have to pay for it themselves. So they don't want they want a little bit of fear in the safety net. That's really important to them. So having just universal health care wouldn't be exactly what they want. They want a kind of mostly universal health care, but something where they can keep scaring people.
Interesting development in the Paramount Warner Brothers situation where a judge said the quiet part out loud, said, we're going to pause on this deal for a minute because it looks like it might have violated antitrust regulations. You've been screaming this from the top of the hills for a long time, that it's kind of weird when one group of people, one family controls that much media. It feels a little bit like Hungary or India or places like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is another example of oligarchy. So the Ellison family gave $45 million to get Trump elected, and then they buy up Paramount, and now they're trying to buy, which is, CBS News. Now they're trying to buy Warner Brothers, which owns CNN. And, this is just another example of the acquisition of power unchecked by the federal government. In this case, however, the states, so a lot of Democratic attorneys general stepped up and sued, and then because the deal does look illegal, and effectively they have delayed the merger from closing until next June probably, and there's going to be a trial, and we will actually see whether the deal can pass legal muster, which is very cool to actually see the rule of law functioning in this country in at least one corner of the world.
Yeah, and I guess part of it, there's two pieces of this. One is the state attorney general made the argument that costs will go up for people because there'll be consolidation of all these things. That is one real problem. But the other real problem is the consolidation, the idea that those of us, people like me who are supposed to hold power to account, when you're owned by that same power or your owners are chums with that power, your edge gets dulled.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge problem to take CBS and CNN and the Ellisons also own a chunk of TikTok and put that all into the hands of one family who are very close with the Trump administration. This is something that, Trump brags about regularly. We're seeing him weaponize the FCC to try to control the media. These are things that I think are just, they're kind of crazy corrupt. And that's not necessarily part of the antitrust case. The antitrust case has to do with wages and prices, but it certainly is a serious policy problem. It's certainly something the FCC should have looked into. But of course, what are we going to say? That's not going to happen, right?
Matt,
Marie Antoinette is choking on her cake today because in Donald Trump's world, it's cake or brazen grift and corruption for him and his billionaire buddies, and the gallows for the little guy. New reporting by the New York Times finds that even as Donald Trump is issuing pardons to his wealthy friends and donors at rates we've never seen before for crimes like wire fraud, bank fraud, insider trading, and money laundering, Donald Trump is devoting his energy to targeting small dollar fraud. The Times writes this, quote, as the White House expands its war on fraud, the Justice Department announced criminal charges in recent days against a new symbol of that battle, a food truck in Santa Ana, California. The new emphasis on small dollar fraud comes as the administration has issued pardons and commutations to white-collar convicts, pulled back from pursuing criminal cases against multinational corporations, and dropped high-profile charges against wealthy executives. One former federal prosecutor telling the New York Times that a food truck, quote, is not the kind of case you would typically see federal law enforcement resources being poured into. And that's resources being pulled from other areas. We're not seeing an increase in fraud prosecutions involving public companies, investment frauds, and the more traditional Wall Street prosecutions typically pursued by the Justice Department. Donald Trump letting his friends and donors off the hook isn't just making his friends and donors richer, it's making all of us poorer in the process. In one analysis by the California governor's office earlier this year, they find that, quote, victims and the public won't get back the nearly $2 billion that courts had ordered those criminals to pay as part of their sentences, or were considering ordering when the pardons came in. And the Trump administration isn't stopping there. Axios reports this. The Treasury Department this week scrapped a key part of the federal anti-corruption law, the Corporate Transparency Act, that required anonymous shell companies and other firms to disclose their owners. All of this is a part of Donald Trump's effort to transform the American economy. As one writer in The Atlantic puts it, quote, his administration has worked relentlessly to topple America's anti-corruption infrastructure, eliminating task forces dedicated to combating dirty money, killing the enforcement of anti-bribery statutes, and gutting efforts to force the wealthiest Americans to pay their fair share of taxes, among countless other measures. The demolition of the Corporate Transparency Act is just the latest and most dramatic move to cater to the president's deep-pocketed buddies and fellow cronies, but it surely won't be the last. Donald Trump working overtime to transform America into a country by and for the oligarchs is where we begin today with some of our favorite experts and friends. Former Assistant Special Agent in charge at the FBI, National Security and Intelligence Analyst Michael Feinberg's here. Also joining us, Puck News Senior Political Columnist and National Affairs Analyst John Heilman is here. Also joining us, former Department of Justice pardon attorney Liz Oyer is here. She's now the host of the podcast, Is This Really Legal? Michael Feinberg, I start with you. It is extraordinary when you take all this reporting together, because you could look at one pardon and it could be a massive example of white-collar crime or fraud, of the defrauding of investors, Madoff style. But you take all these things next to each other, and it is a clear, it is a deliberate, it is a brazen, it is a deeply politically unpopular, it is a very anti-capitalistic policy to fold into your economy corruption, fraud, and criminality. And I wonder what you make of the long and short-term damage being done.
The damage is immense, and unfortunately, like so many things that this administration is doing, undoing it will take orders of magnitude longer than it took to destroy. Look, there's a couple things going on here. The first and most obvious one is that this administration pursues policies to benefit the socioeconomic class to which most of the policymakers belong. But I'm going to say the quiet part out loud here. If you look at the sort of small-scale fraud they are now solely pursuing, whether it's against daycares in Minneapolis or food trucks in Southern California, I'm willing to bet that if you did another sort of demographic breakdown and analysis, you would find that this is just one more piece of the administration's general preference to go after minorities at the expense of going after people who are actually damaging the country. The notion that you would go after a daycare or a food truck or something else with a relatively small economic footprint and no tentacles that reach into other criminal organizations while giving a pass to major corporations that might actually be committing large-scale fraud or enabling embezzlement and money laundering is insane. And I can't find any legitimate motive for it.
What can you say about all of the capabilities that are being either purged from the Department of Justice, redirected inside the Department of Justice, and how long it takes to sort of get those wheels grinding again in these kinds of complicated investigations. I mean, Enron becomes such a flashpoint because it's so hard to topple and take on a company like Enron. Just talk about all of the brain drain.
Yeah, let's not forget, when Enron was prosecuted, it required the establishment of a specialized task force involving multiple government agencies that spent years sorting through the detritus and dregs of that company in order to make an effective prosecution and get justice, or at least as much justice as could be gotten for its victims. That's going to be exponentially more difficult the next time something like that happens, because this Department of Justice, whether we're talking about the main RFK building or its criminal investigative subcomponents like the FBI, they've jettisoned literally centuries of cumulative subject matter expertise and experience. You can't just replace a toughened, experienced prosecutor or a seasoned investigator with somebody who just graduated from law school or Quantico. Becoming experienced by necessity involves having experiences. And when you're pushing people out simply because you want to replace them with loyalists, you lose all that. And it's going to take years to rebuild.
Liz, I wanted to set up the gutting of the sort of corporate fraud investigation unit next to the pardons, because taken together, they really are this two sides of the coin, right? It's not just criminal conduct on a scale vast enough to damage countless ordinary people not being investigated. It's the people who were investigated, who were convicted by juries of their peers or who settled, acknowledging guilt, being pardoned if they happen to be political allies.
Yeah, the pardon power has become completely corrupted under Donald Trump. Essentially, he has wielded it to decide that the laws don't apply to certain types of people in whom he sees something of himself. He has actually granted pardons now to 3 corporations, which is literally unprecedented. There is no known example of any other president actually pardoning a corporation. He has also used the pardon power primarily to benefit wealthy individuals who have committed large-scale financial crimes and who owe tremendous amounts of money either to the victims of their crimes or to taxpayers. Donald Trump has walked away from prosecutions of those individuals using the pardon power, and his Justice Department has repeatedly dismissed major cases against wealthy individuals. The most recent example of that I've been following is an individual named Gautam Adani, who is one of the wealthiest men in the world. This week, charges were dismissed related to foreign bribery and fraud. His net worth is over $80 billion, and he apparently, according to reporting by numerous outlets, offered the Justice Department $10 billion, said that he would invest $10 billion in the United States in exchange for these charges being dismissed. The prosecutors said that's not why they ultimately dismissed them, but at the end of the day, the charges were dismissed against this incredibly wealthy individual over the objections of career prosecutors and investigators, and seemingly only because he had the ability to support and assist Donald Trump in his political agenda in some way, which is a total corruption and abuse of the discretion of the Justice Department.
Liz, weigh in on Michael Feinberg's point about the cases that do seem to be getting department resources and leading to investigations and prosecutions are, in this example, a food truck. Another example that J.D. Vance talks about a lot is, I think, daycares in the state of Minnesota. Talk about the things that are being targeted.
Yeah, the prosecutorial priorities of this administration are just overtly entrenching disparities that have long existed in the federal criminal justice system. I was a federal public defender for about 10 years, and the majority of my clients were low-income people of color. And those people have always experienced the unfairness of the criminal justice system because of disproportionate targeting with prosecutions and because of having less resources to defend those cases. This administration has essentially doubled down on those disparities, which other administrations have tried to alleviate and ameliorate through prosecutorial policies. But Donald Trump does not care one bit about who he is targeting disproportionately and how his prosecution policies affect communities of color, low-income communities, communities with large immigrant populations. I mean, those are the people that he ultimately does not care about at the end of the day. And he is pursuing political objectives by disproportionately prosecuting people in those communities, while wealthy, white business owners and people who look like Donald Trump are going free for very serious crimes that have very serious consequences for their victims.
He's deregulating Wall Street and crypto, which he uses for self-enrichment, and technology and AI more than most presidents, even gutting the gold standard federal enforcement against criminal corruption, tax evasion, and corporate malfeasance. Deregulating banks. This is all happening, whether you track it or not. He and his family embrace these kind of conflicts to enrich themselves, a grift which obviously undercuts the administration's credibility. But tonight, right now in this special report, we're also going to look at how it risks an even wider impact. We know that gutting rules and standards contributed to the 2008 financial crash. Markets need rules to function well. Otherwise, greed and fraud grow. And if you do have a bubble that pops, it is costly. Everyone ends up being forced to pay for it. So before I go any further in our special report that we've prepared for you right now, and you're going to see how it affects Trump and the world you're living in and everything, before I go further, I want to remind us all of where we were when Republicans were in charge of the White House and the Treasury, and they engineered that taxpayer bailout of Wall Street amid the panic of that crash.
History in the making. The Dow plummets more than 777 points, its biggest one-day point drop.
He has no idea how bad it is out there. He has no idea. He has no idea.
Bear Stearns today leading the tumble on Wall Street. The stock plunging 45%.
Lehman Brothers is going bankrupt.
Meltdown. The American financial system is rocked to its foundation.
That crash upended Americans' lives more than any other development since then. Indeed, in politics and life, we discuss a lot of issues that don't actually matter as much as this, and, as our report will explore, being ready to try to combat the risk of another crash. The anger against that bailout spanned from left to right. Many politicians solemnly claimed never again, and lessons learned. And yet tonight, I'm here to tell you, here we are again. Huge signs of a bubble. Risky debt, market concentration in tech, Republicans deregulating these market rules, as I just showed you, more under Trump than they'd ever tried before. An overheated stock market has many warning of a bubble, including financial experts. You can see all kinds of headlines, including from the Financial Bible, the Wall Street Journal. And this bubble could dwarf that last crash I just showed you. It could rock the banks and the backbone of the markets to the point that it could impact everyone, not just people who have a lot of money in the markets or are in tech. Last time, the banks saw those lax rules and exploited them. They pushed the unaffordable housing debt into the bubble. After that crash, billionaire Larry Ellison said that when you have that kind of debt, it does cast a long shadow.
The problem is the American consumer is so deeply in debt. This is not going to come back, certainly for 5 years. The United States is not going to be the engine for growth around the world.
That was then. And Ellison knows debt. He is the seventh richest person in the world with about $190 billion. And depending on the day, because a lot of that's in stock, he can at times surpass Musk as the richest. Ellison also uses more debt than most billionaires. His company, Oracle, has a whopping debt level that is hard to even put into words or understand. They have over $150 billion in debt right now. Ellison's also backing the deal with $40 billion to get Warner Brothers, Discovery, Paramount, and CNN all under one roof. You've heard a lot about his son, David Ellison. It's Larry Ellison's billions, though, backing that in debt. Oracle is reportedly looking at new layoffs amidst this debt bomb, and it already cut some jobs last year. The Times reporting Ellison's AI bet has an astronomical amount of debt. Now, the logic has been the more you spend building this new AI infrastructure, the more you would earn. The Times reporting, though, that there may be limits to that. And Ellison's effective maneuvering with Trump also makes him now a face of this very risky experiment in politically connected capitalism. Just as mega billionaire Elon Musk's sort of rich governing gambit, remember those cabinet meetings in the first few months last year? That really tested who owns our democracy and whether handing the keys to a billionaire would be good for the public. That was one version of this test. But the version I'm telling you about tonight, while perhaps less loud, certainly less cabinet meeting crashes, is actually more far-reaching. And so we're going to show you exactly what's going on here. Ellison's wealth and his tech debt puts him at the center of those fears I mentioned about an AI bubble. And that media debt puts him at the center of the MAGA mission to buy CNN and reshape what Americans see, from movies to news. And while Elon Musk is certainly the louder Trump-connected billionaire, I don't think anyone would dispute that title for him, Ellison, who you might have heard a bit less about, is the key insider on so many parts of this tech boom and this MAGA agenda. Now, whether he personally shares MAGA politics or not, or just sees this as the cost of doing business at this very Trumpy transactional moment in American history, is a question going inside his mind or heart. But if you look at the actions, as Trump was inaugurated, those first hectic hours, issuing the January 6th pardons, a march by Musk into Washington, acting like a co-president, giving big speeches. I mean, you follow politics, you follow the news, you probably remember there was a lot going on in that opening couple hours. But it's worth recalling who was doing the actual business with the brand new president on his first full day in office, January 21st of last year. It was then 80-year-old Ellison deploying his power to bring, let's take this in full, I want you to see this footage, to bring AI mogul Sam Altman to the White House for an event that was billed as the president's remarks regarding U.S. infrastructure investment, but not old school or old-fashioned infrastructure. We're talking about the same AI debt that I just told you about, and even Trump then mused about how unusual it was for Ellison to even be in that role.
We wouldn't be able to do this without you, Mr. President, and I'm thrilled that we get to.
This is as you said yesterday, this is the beginning of golden age of America. He's so respected, and the group, and it's really an honor. But for Larry to be here and do this is very unusual because he doesn't do this stuff. He doesn't need it.
Thank you, Mr. President. We certainly couldn't do this without you. It would simply be impossible.
Now, you don't need to be a tech guru to know that praise works on Trump. Ellison also using that appearance to tie his tech business plan to Trump, to the government. We're talking about huge investments that might need government help, or as I reminded everyone, maybe a bailout someday, depending on how this goes. Also, I'm going to show you more from that event. If you don't remember it, remember there was a lot of other stuff going on. But it was comically false to claim that project would be, quote, impossible without Trump. Donald Trump had been on the job one day while those investments, the building, had been going on for a while, including actually 10 constructed buildings that were already in progress. Ellison even mentioned that in the same presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We certainly couldn't do this without you. It would simply be impossible. AI holds incredible promise for all of us, for every American. We've actually been working with OpenAI for a while and with Masa for a while. The data centers are actually under construction. The first of them are under construction in Texas. Each building's 500,000 square feet. There are 10 buildings currently being built, but that will expand to 20 and other locations.
Yeah, so not exactly impossible without you, sir, but more like we've already been doing it. The work was going on for a while. It would have continued no matter who won that election. But what you saw there was Altman and Ellison pitching why this would be good going forward. Public benefits of AI. And those may prove true. But this rush, and now this astronomical debt, is still about money, not just benefits for the little guy. For example, we don't hear a push from the medical community to rush this tech through a debt bomb when you could just adapt this tech over a more normal timeline and test how it works in hospitals, in research, in looking at materials, right? It's the business folks who are selling public benefit, but actually in a rush on their own fast debt timeline.
As this technology progresses, we will see diseases get cured at an unprecedented rate. We will be amazed at how quickly we're curing this cancer and that one and heart disease.
Imagine early cancer detection, the development of a cancer vaccine for your particular cancer aimed at you, and have that vaccine available in 48 hours. This is the promise of AI and the promise of the future.
Being early and being first matters in business. This tech industry is concentrated among a small group, most of whom were already the early big winners. Now they're making these decisions that could shape technology, the labor market, or even our entire economy. Because remember, there's no rules from the government here. You've probably heard people say this AI thing could get out of control, could have risks, could even have existential risks, and yet we have a deregulated government that is just sitting by, to use an old phrase, Trump leading from behind, letting the others call the shots. And now we do know Ellison cares about AI and tech. He has been fixated on this holy grail of achieving a breakthrough of what they call generative artificial intelligence.
Generative AI. Is it the most important new computer technology ever? Probably. One thing's for certain, we're about to find out, because countless billions of dollars are being invested in generative AI.
The reasoning he shared that it will be revealed to us because these billions and billions are being rushed into the system is not automatic. Indeed, in all the history of technology, there are different ways to do it. This rush and this debt is a choice, and as I'm telling you, a choice being made by the very few. Those current bubble fears are the downside risk. Just this week, a chip company announced a new plan with top banks to backstop the demand for this stuff, not at the tune of 10 or 50 billion more dollars, and you just heard how they've spent so many billions. No, they want to get another $500 billion to backstop this, which means more of the financial system could be on the hook if this all fails. Now, AI is new and complex. The systems are being built and redesigned as we go. And so when and how this evolves or gets better or pays off is really hard to say, even among the experts. But here's what I can tell you, and we've been looking into this. The business side is not that complex. It's pretty simple because business always eventually has to come back to profits. And none of this AI is making profits that covers these investments yet. Now, the bulls who defend this say, well, remember Amazon, transformative product, also did not cover its costs for many years, but then it scaled. Many, many people use Amazon in ways to get things that they couldn't years past, especially if you're in a rural area or you have mobility issues or you're disabled. Amazon works. There are many valid critiques of it, but the fact that it initially didn't make money doesn't mean it doesn't work today. It's now, as you probably know, one of the top companies in world history. But the bears and the skeptics are warning this may not be Amazon, let alone 5 Amazons. This may not scale. The trillions being pumped into this ecosystem of data centers may not return the promised profits, the New York Times reports, if it does not scale. And these trillions in debt matter to you, even if you're not in the stock market or you don't even care about AI. Maybe you're watching going, okay, Ari, I'm not interested in AI. That's fine. But we are all interested in making sure that we protect ourselves, and certainly that we're not marched into another bailout where regular taxpayers have to pay for other people's bets. And yet the Trump administration is letting their buddies do just about whatever they want, gambling with stakes that we all are affected by.
Markets opened 2 minutes ago, so let's get down to business. The Trump family is now moving to expand its crypto venture after getting an initial sign-off from a Trump administration regulator. An arm of the Treasury Department has given World Liberty Financial preliminary approval to become a bank. Once that becomes final, World Liberty will be able to offer its cryptocurrency known as USD1 to clients, as well as earn interest on the business it does. This story has one of our viewers, Donna of Philadelphia, asking the question, what are the implications, risks, and legal and constitutional questions of Trump and Witkoff families chartering their own bank? Donna, you are nailing it, sister. I want to know the same thing. Joining me, veteran Washington correspondent John Harwood. He's a distinguished fellow at Duke University and a columnist for Zateo on Substack. And Rick Newman is here, author of The Pinpoint Press on Substack and former senior columnist at Yahoo Finance. I mean, what do you think? This is crazy.
World bribery financial, let's call it that. I mean, this is just the next step in Trump's self-enrichment scheme. This is not going to be a bank that holds customer deposits. So if you're a Trump lover and you really want to put your savings in Trump's bank, you can't do that. Sorry. But what it's going to be able to allow them to do, I think, is sort of graduate from petty graft to institutional graft. So one of the things they will be able to do with this bank is handle deposits for institutions, hedge funds or money firms or anybody else, foreign, institutions, things like that, where they have a lot of connections. They will make more money handling that stuff under the guise of this is all part of a crypto company. So here we go.
Okay, John, I got a two-parter. I need your reaction. I mean, the regulator who made this decision was appointed by Trump himself, but also, where are the big voices in the banking industry? Okay, these are our public-facing, public CEOs. Where are the Jamie Dimons, the David Solomons, the Larry Finks of the world? Why aren't any of these gentlemen weighing in on this? What Rick just laid out, they all know is the truth.
Of course they do, but they're all hiding and cowering in the corner because they know Trump is likely to go after them. Look, Donald Trump, when he's out of office, he tries to get his voters all riled up by talking about corruption, insider trading, the swamp. And then he gets into office and he cuts the inspector generals out of the government. He cuts the expanded IRS enforcement. And when people complain about that, he just jacks the volume up even louder. So he now wants an immunity deal from the IRS. He doesn't just make crypto deals to enrich himself. He starts a bank and he gets himself deeper into the industry. He strikes a deal or issues an order to curtail the tracking of money laundering. Why would Trump do that? Well, he's been investigated for money laundering himself in the past. This is a grotesque picture that we're seeing, and I don't know where it ends other than a Democratic victory this fall that puts some curbs on him.
Okay, John, and I want to just lay that out for our audience again in case people missed it. Last week we learned that the Treasury Department is scaling back a regulation for shell companies. And the point of this regulation is meant to crack down on money laundering. David Frum from The Atlantic called the move a huge gift for financial crooks. What is your take on this? I mean, I can't even understand the point of the Treasury Department is calling this red tape. I get that there are instances where we have too much prohibitive red tape. Yep. But when you see them cutting things like this, to me, this is how they're paying off the industry from the industry ever speaking up in terms of right and wrong. Yeah, because what they're getting is just so damn good.
And there's another part of this, which is the data that they have on companies that may have done this. They want to get rid of literally destroy the data.
Destroy the data.
I mean, it costs almost nothing to store data. Why would you get rid of the data? I mean, that's the easy part. Every time something like this happens, I say to myself, okay, Trump is all about what's in it for me. How do I enrich myself? So I'm asking the question, what does Trump personally get out of this? I don't know what he gets out of it. We know that he's had his own personal bank accounts closed for suspicion of money laundering. That was in 2021. So is he just like trying to get back at the banking system? I think there's probably more to it than that. Somebody wants a favor. I hope we find out who wants the favor and who's going to benefit from it. I mean, we just need to stay on this because this is, I don't know if you call it legalized graft, but this is like the government of graft.
John, this
And
is
Steph,
absolutely somebody getting a big fat favor. I mean, when I talk to senior people in the financial industry, they avoid me like the plague right now because they don't want to discuss any of these topics because the going is so good for them. They cannot believe the fat city they're in.
Well, look at the market. The market's doing quite well. This is a recovery or an economic cycle in which job creation has slowed, growth has slowed, but the market's doing extremely well. And some people want to step aside and just let that continue to happen. But look, David Frump's piece was excellent in The Atlantic, and he talked about white-collar criminals being the last loyal constituency of Trump. Look how he caters to that constituency. Look at the pardons he's issued while claiming that the administration is going after fraud, by which he means small-scale fraud by people, generally people of color. And all of the pardons he's been issuing to high-level fraudsters, obviating their need to pay back their victims. This guy is openly sympathetic with criminals because those are his people. He's one of them.
Isn't it amazing? Because when you think about when Trump ran for office in 2015, when you think about the early Trump rallies, who Trump's original base was, the whole idea was we are going to go after those people at the top who are stealing from you, the reverse Robin Hoods.
Drain the swamp?
Exactly.
Where'd that go?
And now white-collar criminals are his last loyal constituents, or maybe his just latest. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.